The boy went into the pasture to help the bull. Seconds later, everyone was in shock. The dust hung thick in the air at Riverside Station. A cattle property sprawled across 3,000 hectares of red dirt and sparse scrub in outback Queensland. 12-year-old Connor Walsh stood at the timber rails of the holding yard, his bare feet gripping the sun-warmed wood as he watched the commotion unfold. His father's prize Brahman bull, a massive beast named Thunder, was in serious trouble. The animal's front right leg had become tangled in a length of barbed wire, probably torn loose from the western fence line during last night's storm. Thunder bellowed in pain and fury, his massive head thrashing from side to side. Blood streaked down his grey hide, where the barbs had bitten deep into flesh. The bull weighed close to a ton, all muscle and primal rage. 5 stockmen stood outside the yard, their faces grim beneath sweat-stained akubras. Connor's father, Tom Walsh, gripped the top rail so hard his knuckles had gone white. "We'll have to dart him," Tom said, his voice rough with worry. "No other way. If that wire cuts any deeper, he'll sever the tendon." Connor watched his father pull out his mobile, calling the vet in Longreach, 2 hours away on rough station tracks. Thunder wheeled in circles, the wire cutting deeper with each panicked movement. The bull's eyes rolled white with terror and pain. Connor had known this animal since Thunder was a calf, bottle-fed him when his mother rejected him, spent countless afternoons in the paddock just sitting nearby while the bull grazed. There was a bond there that nobody else understood. The other stockmen muttered amongst themselves. Bobby Chen, the head stockman who'd worked Riverside for 20 years, shook his head slowly. "That bull's gonna hurt himself bad before Doc Hastings gets here. Might be too late by then." Connor's chest tightened. He looked at Thunder's leg, seeing how the wire had wrapped around in a loose coil. If someone could just get close enough to unwind it carefully, the bull might be freed without sedation. But getting close to a ton of panicked, pain-crazed bull was suicide. Even experienced cattlemen wouldn't attempt it. "Dad," Connor said quietly. Tom didn't turn around, still on the phone describing the situation to the vet. "Dad," Connor tried again, louder this time. "Not now, mate." Tom's hand waved him off dismissively. Connor looked back at Thunder. The bull had stopped his frantic circling and stood trembling, his injured leg held awkwardly. Blood dripped steadily into the red dust. The animal's breathing came in harsh, labored bursts. Connor knew that look. He'd seen it in cattle that had given up, that were sliding towards shock. If Thunder went down, tangled in that wire, he might never get back up. The boy's hands gripped the rail tighter. His mind raced through possibilities, all of them dangerous, most of them foolish. But the image of Thunder as a wobbly-legged calf, nuzzling Connor's hand looking for milk, filled his head. The memory of lazy afternoons when Connor would read his school books aloud while sitting against the bull's warm flank under the shade of the old coolibah tree. Thunder wasn't just livestock, he was family. Connor's younger sister, Emma, appeared at his elbow. At 9 years old, she was all freckles and wild blonde hair escaping from plaits. "What are you thinking?" She knew that look on her brother's face. "Nothing," Connor lied. "You're thinking something stupid." Connor glanced at his father, still on the phone. The other men were debating whether to try roping Thunder's good legs to pull him down, a risky option that could result in more injuries. Nobody was looking at Connor. Nobody noticed when he slipped down from the rails and moved along the outside of the yard toward the gate. His heart hammered against his ribs. Every survival instinct screamed at him to stop, to walk away, to wait for the adults to handle it. But Connor had grown up on this station. He'd been around cattle his entire life. He understood their body language, their moods, their breaking points. And right now, he understood that Thunder was running out of time. The gate latch was warm under his fingers. Connor lifted it slowly, careful not to make any sudden noise. The hinges creaked softly as he pulled the gate open just wide enough to slip through. The men were still talking 20 meters away, their backs to him. Emma saw what he was doing and her eyes went huge. "Connor, no!" she whispered urgently. But Connor was already inside the yard. The gate clicked shut behind him. Thunder's head swung toward the sound. The bull's dark eyes locked onto Connor. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The stockmen's voices faded to background noise. Even the flies buzzing in the heat went silent. It was just Connor and Thunder, 12 meters of dusty ground between them. Connor took a slow step forward. His mouth was dry as the red dirt under his feet. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready to bolt. Thunder shifted his weight, favoring the injured leg. A low rumble came from deep in the bull's chest. Not quite a bellow, more of a warning. "Easy, boy." Connor's voice came out steadier than he felt. "Remember me? It's just Connor." Another step. Thunder's ears flicked forward, listening. The bull's sides heaved with each breath. Connor could see the wild panic in those dark eyes, starting to mix with something else. Recognition, maybe. Or hope. Behind him, Connor heard his sister's sharp intake of breath. Then Bobby Chen's shocked voice cut through the afternoon heat. "Bloody hell, Tom, your boy's in the yard." The world exploded into motion. Connor heard his father's roar of fear and fury, heard boots hitting dirt as men rushed toward the rails. But Connor didn't look back. He couldn't afford to. His entire focus was on Thunder, on reading every tiny shift in the bull's posture, every twitch of muscle beneath that grey hide. "Connor Walsh, get out of there right now." His father's voice cracked with terror. But Connor was already halfway across the yard, Thunder's massive head lowered slightly, watching the boys approach. The bull's nostrils flared, scenting the air. Connor kept his movements slow and deliberate, his hands visible, his body language non-threatening. Connor could hear his father climbing over the rails behind him, could hear the panic in the voices of the stockmen shouting warnings, but he blocked it all out. Right now, the only thing that mattered was Thunder and the wire cutting deeper into his leg with every passing second. "Easy, mate. Easy there." Connor kept talking, his voice low and calm despite the fear coursing through his veins. "You remember me, don't you? All those afternoons under the cooliba. Remember when you nicked my sandwich right out of my hand?" Thunder's ears twitched at the familiar voice. The bull shifted his weight again, and Connor saw him wince as the wire bit deeper. Fresh blood welled up around the barbs. Connor was close enough now to smell the bull's fear sweat, that sharp metallic scent mixed with dust and grass. 3 meters separated them. Connor's father was shouting behind him, but the words didn't register. Connor's entire world had narrowed to this moment, to the massive animal in front of him and the trust that had to exist between them. He reached into his pocket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out something he always carried. A handful of molasses-coated feed pellets, Thunder's favorite treat. Connor held out his hand, palm flat, the pellets visible in the harsh sunlight. "Look what I've got, boy. Remember these?" Thunder's nostrils flared wider, his massive head lowered slightly, stretching toward Connor's outstretched hand. The bull took one careful step forward, then stopped. The wire pulled taut and Thunder flinched, but his eyes never left those pellets. Connor took another step closer, 2 meters now, close enough to see the individual flies crawling on Thunder's hide, close enough to see the pain in those dark eyes. Close enough to die if the bull decided to charge. "That's it, mate. Just a bit closer." Connor's hand remained steady, though his heart was trying to hammer its way out of his chest. Thunder stretched his neck out, his huge wet nose nearly touching Connor's palm. Then, with surprising delicacy for such a massive creature, the bull's tongue swept across Connor's hand, gathering up the pellets. Connor used that moment to step right up beside Thunder's massive shoulder, his free hand going to the bull's neck, feeling the heat radiating from the animal's hide. "Good boy. Such a good boy. Now let me help you, yeah?" Behind him, Connor heard his father's voice closer now, controlled but vibrating with suppressed terror. "Connor, son, don't move. Just stay exactly where you are and slowly back away." "Can't do that, Dad," Connor said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. "He's hurting. The wire's cutting deeper every second." Connor's hand moved slowly down Thunder's leg, giving the bull plenty of time to react, to understand what was happening. His fingers found the top coil of barbed wire. It was slick with blood and pulled tight around the leg. Connor could see where it had cut through hide into muscle. Thunder's whole body tensed. A tremor ran through the massive bull. Connor froze, his hand still on the wire. "It's all right, boy. I know it hurts. But I need to get this off you. Can you trust me? Just like when you were little and I helped you with that rope burn. Remember?" Connor slowly, carefully began to work at the wire. The barbs had caught on themselves, creating a twisted knot. Blood made everything slippery. Thunder shifted his weight, and Connor felt the bull's muscles bunch under his hand. One wrong move, one moment of panic, and those massive hooves could crush Connor in seconds. "Talk to him, Connor." Tom's voice was closer now, just outside the danger zone. "Keep him calm." Connor kept up a steady stream of quiet words as his fingers worked at the wire. The barbs cut into his own hands, drawing blood, but he barely felt it. He found where the wire had looped back on itself and began carefully unwinding it. Thunder's breathing had calmed slightly. The bull stood remarkably still, as if he understood that Connor was trying to help. Connor could feel the animal's massive heart beating, could sense the restraint it took for Thunder not to bolt, not to panic, not to fight. "Nearly there, mate. Just a bit more. You're doing so well." The first coil came free. Connor felt it give way and carefully pulled it away from the wound. Thunder's leg twitched, but the bull held steady. Bobby Chen had climbed onto the rails now, watching with wide eyes. "Bloody hell, the boy's actually doing it," Bobby muttered. Connor worked on the second coil. This one was tighter, the barbs deeply embedded. He had to be so careful, had to pull at just the right angle, or he'd tear the wounds even wider. Sweat dripped into his eyes. His hands were shaking now, whether from fear or effort he couldn't tell. Thunder made a low sound, almost like a moan. Connor felt the bull's weight shift again. "I know, boy, I know it hurts." Almost done. Almost done. The wire was fighting him. One barb had caught deep in the muscle and wouldn't come free no matter how gently Connor pulled. He could feel Thunder's patience wearing thin, could sense the bull's instinct to flee battling against his trust in Connor. "Dad, I need wire cutters," Connor called out, his voice tight with concentration. "Son, if I come in there with tools, it might spook him. He'll trust you if you're with me. But we have to do this now. That barb's not coming out without cutting." There was a pause that felt like an eternity. Then Connor heard the gate creak open. His father moved into the yard with the careful grace of someone who'd spent 40 years around cattle. Tom Walsh carried a pair of wire cutters and moved slowly, so slowly, toward his son and the massive bull. Thunder's head swung around at the new presence. His eyes rolled slightly white. Connor felt the animal's muscles tense. "Dad's here to help." Connor kept his voice calm, kept his hand on Thunder's neck. "You know Dad. He's been good to you, hasn't he? Fed you, looked after you." Tom reached Connor's side. Father and son locked eyes for a brief moment. Tom's face was pale under his tan, his jaw tight with fear, but his hands were steady as he positioned the wire cutters around the embedded barb. "On 3, Tom whispered. 1, 2, 3. The cutters snipped through the wire with a sharp click. Thunder jerked hard, nearly knocking Connor over. But Connor held on, his arms wrapping around as much of the bull's neck as he could reach, his voice rising in soothing sounds rather than words. Tom quickly cut through the remaining wire and pulled it free. Thunder stood trembling, his injured leg finally free from the cruel wire. Blood still seeped from the deep cuts, dripping steadily onto the red earth. Connor kept his hand on the bull's neck, feeling the rapid heartbeat gradually begin to slow. Tom carefully backed away with the blood-soaked wire coiled in his hand, his eyes never leaving the massive animal. "Good lad, both of you!" Tom's voice was thick with emotion he was trying to suppress. Connor examined Thunder's leg more closely now that the wire was gone. The wounds were deep but clean cuts, no major arteries severed. The bull would need stitches and antibiotics, but he'd heal. Thunder turned his huge head and looked directly at Connor. In that moment, something passed between them that Connor couldn't put into words. Gratitude, maybe, or recognition of the trust they'd just shared. Connor slowly released his grip on Thunder's neck and took a step back. The bull didn't follow. He simply stood there, favoring his injured leg, but calm now, the panic gone from his eyes. Connor backed toward the gate, never turning away from Thunder, maintaining eye contact until he was safely through the rails. The moment Connor was out, Emma launched herself at him, wrapping her skinny arms around his waist so tight he could barely breathe. His father's hand came down heavy on his shoulder, gripping so hard it almost hurt. Tom's face was a mixture of pride, relief, and residual terror. "Don't you ever do anything that bloody stupid again?" Tom's voice shook. "Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." "But Christ, son." Tom pulled Connor into a rough hug. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." Bobby Chen and the other stockmen gathered around, their faces showing a new respect. Bobby clapped Connor on the back hard enough to make him stumble forward. "Reckon you've got your old man's gift with cattle, young Connor, maybe even better. I've been working stations for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like that." Doc Hastings arrived 40 minutes later, his dusty ute kicking up red clouds as he pulled into the yard. The vet was a lean man in his 60s with weathered skin and clever eyes. He climbed out carrying his medical bag and stopped short when he saw Thunder standing calmly in the yard, injured but no longer panicked. "Well, I'll be—" "Tom, you said on the phone he was going berserk. What happened?" Tom gestured toward Connor with a mixture of pride and residual fear. "My 12-year-old son happened." Doc Hastings listened to the story while he examined Thunder's leg, shaking his head in disbelief. The bull stood remarkably still for the vet, especially with Connor nearby talking softly to him. Doc cleaned and stitched the wounds, administered antibiotics, and wrapped the leg. "He'll be right as rain in a few weeks. Lucky the wire didn't sever anything major." Doc packed up his equipment, then turned to Connor. "Son, what you did was dangerous beyond measure. But it was also one of the most extraordinary things I've witnessed in 40 years of veterinary work. That bull should have killed you. The fact he didn't speaks to something special between you two." That evening, after Thunder had been moved to a recovery paddock close to the house where Connor could check on him regularly, the family sat on the veranda. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Connor's hands were bandaged where the wire had cut him. His mother, Sarah, had cried when she heard what happened, then hugged him so tight he thought his ribs might crack. Tom sat in the old rocking chair his father had made, nursing a beer and watching his son. Connor could feel his father's eyes on him, but didn't look over. Finally, Tom spoke. "Your grandfather had that same gift." "My dad. He could walk into a yard of wild scrub bulls, and they'd calm right down. Never seen anyone else with it until today." Connor looked at his father, surprised. Tom rarely spoke about his father, who died when Tom was just 20. "I didn't know that. He died trying to save a mate who'd been trapped under a rolled vehicle. Went back into danger when everyone else said it was too late." Tom took a long pull from his beer. "Bravest man I ever knew. Until today, maybe." Connor felt his chest tighten with emotion. His father wasn't one for long speeches or emotional declarations. This was as close to "I love you" as Tom Walsh typically got. The next morning, Connor woke before dawn, as always, and went out to check on Thunder. The bull was lying down in the paddock, his injured legs stretched out. When Connor climbed through the fence, Thunder's ears pricked forward. The bull made a low sound, almost friendly, and Connor sat down beside him in the dewy grass. "How you feeling, mate?" Thunder's massive head turned, and the bull sniffed at Connor's hair, his warm breath ruffling the brown strands. Connor leaned back against Thunder's solid warmth and looked up at the stars still visible in the lightening sky. "You scared me yesterday," Connor admitted quietly. "Thought I might lose you." They sat like that for a while, boy and bull, as the sun began to paint the horizon pink. Connor heard footsteps and turned to see his father approaching with 2 mugs of tea. Tom handed one to Connor and sat down on Thunder's other side, both of them using the bull as a backrest. "Been thinking," Tom said after a long silence, "about what happens next season when you go to boarding school in Brisbane." Connor's stomach clenched. He'd been trying not to think about that. His parents had decided he needed better education than the small local school could provide. Come February, too, he'd be leaving Riverside for the city. "I think we need to reconsider that plan," Tom continued. Connor looked at his father in shock. Tom met his eyes steadily. "This station will be yours one day, and yesterday proved you've got something special with the cattle. Be a waste to send that away to learn things from books when the real education is right here." "Really?" Connor could barely believe what he was hearing. "Your mother and I will talk it through proper. But yeah, really." Tom's hand rested briefly on Connor's shoulder. "Riverside needs you. Thunder needs you." As if understanding his name, Thunder shifted slightly, settling more comfortably. Connor felt tears prick his eyes but blinked them back. The 3 of them sat together as the sun rose fully, painting the red earth gold. 3 weeks passed, and Thunder's leg healed remarkably well. The bull moved with only a slight limp now, one that Doc Hastings said would disappear completely within another month. Connor visited Thunder every morning and evening, bringing treats and checking the healing wounds. The bond between them had grown even stronger since that day in the yard. It was a scorching Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Connor was in the machinery shed helping Bobby Chen service one of the motorbikes when Emma came running, her face flushed red from exertion and heat. "Connor, come quick! It's Mum!" Connor's blood went cold. He dropped the wrench he'd been holding and ran, Emma struggling to keep up. What happened? She was checking the solar panels on the eastern ridge. Her ute broke down, and she tried walking back in the heat. Dad found her collapsed near Deadman's Creek. She's not waking up. They reached the homestead to find chaos. His father's ute was parked at a crazy angle, driver's door still hanging open. Connor could hear his father's voice from inside, urgent and scared, talking on the phone. Connor burst through the screen door to find his mother lying on the couch, his father kneeling beside her with a wet cloth pressed to her forehead. Sarah Walsh's face was bright red and covered in sweat. Her breathing came in short, rapid gasps. Connor had seen heat stroke before in cattle. It could kill if not treated quickly. Tom's hand shook as he held the phone to his ear. "What do you mean 2 hours? She needs help now." Tom's voice cracked with desperation. The doctor on the other end was explaining something, but Tom's face only grew more ashen. The Royal Flying Doctor Service was dealing with a critical emergency 300 kilometers north. The ambulance from Longreach was responding to a vehicle accident on the highway. Help couldn't reach them for at least 2 hours. Connor looked at his mother. 2 hours might be too long. Her lips were cracked and dry. Her pulse, when Connor touched her wrist, was racing far too fast. Emma stood in the doorway crying silently, her fists pressed against her mouth. "Dad," Connor's mind was racing. "We need to cool her down faster. We need ice, lots of ice. The freezer's not big enough. We don't have—" Connor was already moving. He grabbed the truck keys from the hook by the door. "Where are you going?" Tom shouted after him. "The cold room at the processing shed. We've got the ice machine there." Connor ran to the processing shed 200 meters from the house, where they kept the industrial refrigeration units for storing meat. The ice machine could produce 50 kilograms in an hour. Connor fired it up, then grabbed every container he could find, filling them with the existing ice supply. His hands burned from the cold, but he didn't care. He loaded the truck and was about to head back when he heard a sound that made him stop, a deep, resonant bellow. Thunder. The bull was in the paddock next to the shed, watching Connor with those intelligent dark eyes. Thunder bellowed again, pacing along the fence line. Connor stared at the bull. An idea hit him so strange, so unlikely, that he almost dismissed it immediately. But he remembered Doc Hastings explaining that Thunder's recovery had been remarkably fast, faster than expected. The vet had commented that Brahman cattle had exceptional resilience, that their blood seemed to carry something special. Connor's grandfather's voice echoed in his memory from stories his father had told. The old man believed that cattle, especially bulls that had bonded with humans, could sense distress. Some claimed they could even help, though no one could explain how. Connor made a decision that would sound insane to anyone who hadn't experienced what he and Thunder had shared. He opened the gate. "Come on, boy. Mum needs help." Thunder didn't hesitate. The bull walked through the gate and followed Connor toward the truck. Connor opened the back tray, and Thunder, impossibly, stepped up into it, using the loading ramp that was still extended from earlier work. The bull settled down in the tray as if this was something he did every day. Connor drove back to the homestead, the ice containers rattling beside Thunder. His father burst out of the house as Connor pulled up, ready to shout about wasting time. Then Tom saw Thunder in the back of the truck, and his words died. "Connor, what?" "Just trust me, Dad, please." Bobby Chen and 2 other stockmen had arrived, alerted by Emma. They stared in disbelief as Connor led Thunder into the house. The bull moved carefully through the doorway, his massive body somehow fitting through the space. Sarah lay on the couch, barely conscious, her breathing labored. Connor positioned Thunder next to the couch, then began packing ice around his mother while Thunder settled down beside her. The bull lowered his huge head and rested it gently near Sarah's shoulder. Connor placed his mother's hand on Thunder's neck. "I know this sounds mad," Connor said to his father's stunned expression, "but Granddad always said the old bulls knew things. Thunder's body temperature is lower than ours. He's like a living cooling system. And there's something else. Something about the connection." Tom looked ready to argue, but Sarah's breathing was becoming more erratic. He had no better options. He nodded and helped Connor arrange more ice. What happened over the next 30 minutes defied explanation. Thunder lay perfectly still beside Sarah, his breathing slow and deep. Connor kept his hand on both of them, Thunder's warm hide and his mother's fevered skin. The bull's presence seemed to create a zone of calm in the chaotic room. Sarah's breathing gradually slowed, became more regular. The dangerous flush began to fade from her cheeks. By the time Doc Hastings arrived in his ute, having heard the emergency call on the radio and come despite being off duty, Sarah's eyes had opened. She was drinking water, her temperature dropping back toward normal. The doctor checked her vitals with an expression of profound confusion. "I don't understand. She should be in much worse condition. What did you do?" Connor looked at Thunder, who gazed back with those knowing eyes. Tom put his hand on Connor's shoulder, then reached out and touched Thunder's massive head. "Something I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it myself," Tom said quietly. Doc Hastings examined Sarah thoroughly, shaking his head in amazement. She was weak and dehydrated, but out of danger. He set up an IV drip and gave strict instructions for rest. But the crisis had passed. Thunder had to be led back outside eventually, though he went reluctantly, looking back at Sarah several times. Connor walked him to the paddock and stood at the fence long after the bull had settled down to graze. His father found him there as the sun set. "Your grandfather used to tell a story," Tom said, leaning against the fence beside his son, "about a bull on his property when he was young. Said that bull saved his life once when he was thrown from a horse in the back paddock. Nobody believed him. I didn't believe him." Tom looked at Connor with new understanding in his eyes. But I believe it now. There's something special between you and Thunder, something that goes beyond training or trust. Your grandfather had it. You've got it. And today, it saved your mother's life." Connor felt tears finally break free, running down his cheeks. His father pulled him close. "You've got a gift, son, a real gift. And Riverside isn't just your future because it's the family station. It's your future because you're meant to be here, doing this work, understanding these animals in ways most people never will. That night, Connor checked on his mother one last time before bed. Sarah was sleeping peacefully, the IV drip still attached to her arm. She opened her eyes when Connor touched her hand. "Emma told me what you did, about thunder. It sounds crazy, Mum." Sarah smiled weakly. "No crazier than a 12-year-old boy walking up to an injured bull and removing barbed wire. You've got magic in you, Connor Walsh, your own kind of magic." Connor visited thunder before going to bed. The bull was lying down, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. Connor sat beside him in the darkness, listening to the night sounds of the outback, the distant call of a mopoke, the rustle of wind through the sparse grass. "Thank you, mate," Connor whispered, "for everything." Thunder's response was a soft exhale, warm breath that smelled of grass and earth and something Connor couldn't name, but recognized as home. Whatever had happened today, whatever unexplainable connection existed between them, Connor knew his life had changed. The boy who had walked into that yard 3 weeks ago wasn't the same person sitting here now. He'd found his purpose, his calling, his place in the world. And it all started the day he went into the pasture to help the bull.